This is an archive recording of a Magic Monday episode in 2018. Welcome to Magic Monday, where I explore all things magical, mystical, and metaphysical. I'm Jessica Dewberry, psychic and visionary of Miss J. Dew Intuitive. Thank you for joining. Hi there, and welcome to the first ever Magic Monday as a live talk radio show, where every Monday I'll bring you all things magical, mystical, and metaphysical. I am extremely excited to be here, and I hope you enjoyed your Christmas, if you celebrate that, or your winter solstice, and had just a good time, bringing in the new year with that lovely yet emotional full moon in Cancer. Full moons in general are just a great time to celebrate and to let stuff go and to begin to re-envision or revise what you want to bring into your life moving forward. So coupled with the new year, it was also just prime time to set completely new intentions and goals. So it kind of took on the energy of a new moon too. And around this time, Saturn, the planet of wisdom and, just like hard knocks, that wisdom acquired through lessons. So it's earned, right? But Saturn returned to its home sign of Capricorn. So there was just a lot going on cosmically speaking, which is usually the case. I mean, the planets do what they do. We're influenced the way we are, and we do our best to respond accordingly. But I do feel like since Saturn was returning after many years of being elsewhere, it was highlighting profoundly for many of us the long-standing patterns that we just keep repeating, or what seems to be that major, and I emphasize the word major because we have many, but that major life lesson that's for us to learn, whether you are one who believes we incarnated with this lesson or just managed by being the humans that we are to create it for ourselves somewhere in the shuffle. So I just remember during those very, very last days of December thinking, wow, how did I get here again with these specific thoughts and with these specific feelings that were feeling really familiar, but just not that good, And it seemed like I was looking at the same old pattern that just seems to keep popping up, no matter what I did to change it. So, of course, being who I am, I felt around in those feelings for a bit and came to understand, okay, this is the final push of that. It was almost as if Saturn was saying, hey, do you remember this? But don't get too lost in the details because I'm going to show you how to let it go for real this time. And when I tuned in to see what I needed to do, I was just shown an image of my body looking in one direction toward the pattern and therefore the past because that's where that pattern is. And then my body shifting and looking in the other direction. So the message around that seemed very clear to me. It was one of just don't dwell in it, look the other way towards the solution, because then came the download of the action steps I needed to take. So, I find that this can really apply to anything, though. Whenever we are observing some aspect of our reality we don't really like, that we want to change to make better and to have, just so that it feels more aligned with who we are and what we need. All we have to do is allow ourselves to look away from it towards where the solutions are. I have never found the answer or solution to a question or problem while sitting in the energy of the problem or question. No, it comes in the moments when we are distracted from it, taking a walk, playing with our kids or the pets, so looking the other way. All right, so later in today's show, our guest, Natalie Ealy, and I hope I'm saying that right, who's a spiritual counselor, holistic healer, and writer, will join us to share her insights on today's topic, which is all about religion. So it was it was a major stepping stone. Religion was for me that led to my to me being spiritual, right? Led me to spirituality. And I'll share with you something I've used later also many times to just quickly zen out wherever I am. But diving into today's topic, it just felt right to talk about religion while we're still early on in January. So right after the holidays and get togethers, while many of us are still in that fleshy place of giving and receiving and doing things for each other from the heart, which are some of the most precious qualities found in religion. However, all of the things that are there also are often the very reason we forget how to be and how to do this at other times of the year. So I know religion is a huge topic and a big place to be. But I've been guided to share 4 essential points that helped me over the span of at least a decade that will hopefully help you begin to view it in a different light and navigate some of those shifting feelings you may have surrounding it so you can gain more clarity of where you fit in or what feels right for you or doesn't. So, and I kind of hate to start off with this, but it does it is really draining for me, how people constantly find ways to separate themselves from others, to say, well, what I do is not exactly what you do, or who I am, or what religion I'm a part of is not exactly who you are, or what you're a part of. So that makes us different. And it's not just done in a way to feel, it doesn't just feel like it's done to recognize any difference that may in fact be there, but instead to focus on those differences, right? But what you focus on grows. So if we're going to spend our time focusing on what separates us and the differences, then we'll just find more and more of them. When in fact what we usually want is it's usually the opposite, right? To feel supported, to feel included. So in order to get that, though, you have to be able to switch the focus. Focus more on the positive, focus more on the similarities, on what makes us connected or makes us feel connected. Focus more on what brings us together. And that, of course, relates to religion as well. So there is a word I really like, and the word is omnism. And it just means that, well, actually, it's one of the only isms, right, that I can completely support because it's the idea that no one religion holds all the truth, but that truth can be found in all of them. And that truth is really always pointing us to what's at the basis of all religion anyway. If we really think about it, right, it's like at the basis is compassion, understanding, acceptance, and of course, love. But of course, I didn't always feel this way. I used to separate everything out too. It's something we learn to do, given how things work in our society, and even when going to, for example, college, even a very liberal college, which is where I went. There are many, many wonderful things I learned and took away from that experience of college. But and I wouldn't give it back for anything, but I can also look back and see that the coursework and the discussions and things going on campus and what I did with those impressions and that information, it was truly a time when I learned and solidified my ability to just split hairs infinitely and to spot differences among everything. So now I'm going to share with you the 4 points that helped me stop doing that when it came to religion and to actually appreciate and respect the diversity of religions that exist in the world and what they have the capacity to provide for people, but to also understand where I fit into all of that. So number one is that we don't have to stay in the same religion we're born into. There are no set rules, regardless of what family or community may tell us. So I was born into a Christian family. My whole family is Christian, and I was really active in church until I was in my 20s. I used to participate, and at one point I was even a deaconess in training, and I used to facilitate Bible study, in part because I was really really good at the literature, at analyzing texts and bringing in outside text to facilitate discussion. But aside from that, I used to read a lot outside of church, and I used to read any and everything. And what that did was to help me broaden my perspective about life and the world and religion. And I finally got to a place where things started to change for me. And I felt that all the things I had learned about religion just weren't really sitting well with me anymore. And regardless of whatever I did, I would never, I felt like I would never be able to fully be who I was as a Christian. And that was my truth then. And if you were born into any sort of religion, then perhaps you can sympathize with this or understand where I'm coming from when I say, that there was this closed-mindedness that I eventually realized was rooted in fear and ultimately caused me to start backing away from the church and back away from my responsibilities that I had taken on because I just had way too many questions that weren't jiving. And these kinds of things made me feel more and more disconnected until I just stopped going and participating altogether. And until I started playing around with the idea of instead being spiritual, and with that term spirituality, started to explore it more, which still feels far more liberating. And later on, I began to purchase certain tools, such as the tarot, and went back to collecting my objects from nature that I've done for a very long time anyway. So, number one, again, is that you never have to stay with any one religion just because you were born into that religion, regardless of what people or family or community may tell you. Number two, is that you can switch up and change practices however you want and whenever you want. So people used to tell me that I was confused because I left the church and I didn't know who I really was and I couldn't change my beliefs. And yes, you definitely can. They're your beliefs. You can do with them what you want. You have free will to decide what you believe and what you don't believe, or change that up at any time, or assess your values and figure out exactly what things mean for you. So you have full permission. Give yourself full permission to explore everything, whatever practice or religion you feel drawn to or are curious about. Aside from buying my first tarot deck and collecting stuff from nature, I would also attend all kinds of churches and temples. So there was still this part of me, though, that thought I had to replace Christianity with another religion. That in order for my soul to feel aligned and find the balance that I needed, I had to do that inside of some type of church or religion where others were doing a similar thing. But I did allow myself to also do whatever I felt drawn to. So I was practicing I Ching and meditating to the call of prayer and reading up on Buddhism and using sage and trying out different religions for myself to decide, okay, does this one feel good? Maybe I should try that one. Maybe I should be that, maybe I should go here. And so you can do that, with not only religion, but with whatever else is in front of you to explore. So number two, again, is to explore and give yourself full permission to do that. You can explore any religion or any practice that you feel drawn to. All right, so number three is to get comfortable and content with not being a part of any organized religion if that feels like the right thing for you. So like I said in number two, I was trying on different religions to see, which one would stick for me. But eventually I decided I didn't want to be a part of any religion. And once I really understood that I didn't have to be, that religion that I was born into and that I could explore, the next step for me was just knowing that I didn't have to choose one at all. So I became perfectly fine with mixing and matching, how I saw fit based upon how I felt and what I needed. I started completely doing my own thing outside of any one religion, and that allowed in all of this, just new light and new perspective on what religion is for me, and ultimately led me to a lot of new ideas about it. So, now meditation is my religion. Nature is definitely my religion. I come across others who say love is their religion, and that feels good too. So you get to decide what it means for you and how it fits into your life, and, not the other way around. All right, so number 4 is just the embodiment of knowing. We never have to reach outside of ourselves to connect into divine wisdom or divine energy. So it is already within us, right? So we are our own universe. And when I say that, I don't mean that there is so many of us that we are helping to create the number of people in the universe, or that that we are in co-creation with this universe outside of ourselves, although we are that too, right? But it's like that Rumi quote, where he says, stop acting so small. You are the universe in a static motion. So I was at this event recently where there was this astrologer who was talking about how each planet connects to the chakras. So it's almost like we're our own walking solar system. If you think about it, no two people even have the same fingerprints. So how phenomenal is that? And how, like uniquely designed are we? But I feel that religion, the disconnection that happens is it's just that it always has us reaching for something else, for some god or deity, without placing as much emphasis on pulling up that wisdom from within. So from it's because that God, right, is just an avenue for us to connect back to the wisdom that we already have and are. So within us is already all of the answers we will ever need. And I feel like when we reach for things outside ourselves in religion and other things, we think that that will be the thing that comes in and changes our lives or opens our eyes. And really, that takes place from a place within. So we can always connect to that energy or into that wisdom because we carry it. We carry it with us. It's in our body, in our cells, and in our psyche. Another mentor said something great, and I love the way she said it. She said, we are already the gods we're seeking. And this has made me begin to look at even how I do what I do as a psychic. So when I say that word psychic, because some people really get weirded out and geeked out by it. But when I say that word, I just mean that I am able to read energy in a very heightened way. So I can connect to not only the living, so people, plants, and animals, but also to inanimate objects, and often receive messages from people who are deceased. So I've always liked to think that I am working with a team, when I'm giving a psychic reading. And by that, I mean that, I've got my guides, and the person I'm reading, they've got theirs. And my team and their team are having a conversation. And I'm just, delivering the images and the messages. But recently, I talked to a man who is a part of a psychic school, right? And he told me he looks at it in a completely different way. He feels that by thinking that we are working with a team the way I like to think, it's still doing that very thing of reaching and therefore relying on something that is not us, on something that is outside of us. So he believes that, that during a reading, all of the information is coming from that place of knowing within us, which is the very thing I'm talking about here in connection to religion. So I do feel, like he's onto something. I can kind of jive with that. Although I also feel like I'd really have to just let it settle in, right? To settle for a bit, for me to settle into that, to first see if or how I could have that work for me, that idea. So again, when it comes to religion, we never have to reach for something outside ourselves to find divine wisdom or divine energy, because we are this. We are our own universe, and we carry this with us. But at the same time, though, I want to acknowledge that religion can be and is for many a catalyst for stepping into that place of soul alignment. And by that, I mean feeling at one with who you really are, for feeling a part of something larger than yourself, for restoring hope and faith in yourself and others, right? And that is very special. And for being more accepting and appreciative of life and all the dynamism that everyone around you and the world brings to it. But of course, there's always the flip side of the coin, as there is in all things. So whereas religion can be and do all the wonderful things that I just mentioned, it can also, if a person allows it, to create and perpetuate the exact opposite. You know, that idea of, for example, my way is the best way because of who my God is, and the religion I am a part of is first and foremost extremely anti-God-like within itself, and especially when it's accompanied by violence. But throughout my journey of becoming the psychic and the visionary that I am, and that I continue to become, I'm constantly meeting new people, you know, more and more people who are on a path to help transcend and expand our collective consciousness as it pertains to religion and how we interact with it. So one thing I do find admirable is when I meet someone or hear about someone who has managed to both step into their spiritual gifts in a major way as a spiritual teacher or healer or a psychic or medium, while also still considering themselves very much a Christian or Catholic or Protestant or whatever it is, right? Because it never has to be one or the other, you know, and they are living proof of that. So please don't listen to this show and feel like, oh my God, I know I'm a healer, making my way to fulfilling my purpose. Does that mean I have to leave my church or drop my religious association? You know, of course not. But I do encourage you to just evaluate, to just, you know, really assess how well it's working for you and be honest about it. I just know that for me, my path of least resistance as it relates to religion and to sharing my spiritual gifts openly was just to set religion aside altogether. It just felt like too much to get caught up on, and there was too much. I was ready to expand beyond. So I hope that helps you at least begin to broaden your perspectives of what religion is and what it means to you and perhaps for other people. And I was hoping Natalie Ealy, our guest for today, would be here with us now. So I feel like we should give her just a couple minutes here to see if she'll call in. But if not, you know, we can leave it there, or perhaps I'll go ahead and talk about these entangles that I wanted to bring up to you. So hopefully we'll be able to get to Natalie in a second. Maybe she's making her way, you know, to the phone lines. But she is a fellow spiritual counselor and holistic healer and writer, and will hopefully be joining us soon to share her insights on this topic and to talk with us a bit about the afterlife, which is one of the most important and major aspects and debates within this topic. You know, every religion has their different take on the afterlife. And what I find most fascinating, I guess, about the afterlife is that, I mean, it's like nothing else. You know, it's like everything else, really. It's like nothing else and everything else, yeah. But really what we begin to believe about it, you know, is, gosh, like we create our own heaven or our own hell, right? And I've heard from those who have had near-death experiences and things like that. Whatever our beliefs are about the afterlife, before they had that experience, and being able or having that experience of like touching the other side, right, of going farther into that spiritual realm than most of us go or have the privilege of going to and then returning, right? They have shared that whatever their perceptions are or the ways that they view the afterlife, that is what they saw. So how could there ever be just one type of afterlife that exists, right? So that is always a very fascinating topic for me, and I'd love to hear what she has to say. But while we're giving her a few minutes here to call us, I will share with you really quickly just the thing I want to do to share with you that helps us or has helped me many times, just kind of zen out, right? And you really don't need more than just a pen and a piece of paper. So like I was saying, you really just don't need more than a pen or a piece of paper. So I'm just going to talk to you briefly about mandalas and Zentangles. So mandalas are we've got Natalie on line 1. So Natalie, are you there?
Basically, I would say I would have to agree with you. A lot of things that, you say about religion. I don't prescribe to any one religion. I believe they all have something to contribute. I've studied comparative religion in college, and I've also dabbled in many religions and stepped foot into Catholic churches, Buddhist temples, gurdwaras, etc. My preferred religions will always be Eastern, just because of the freedom and the path to one's own destiny, I believe should be unique on a spiritual level. It is my belief that the universe hears us all, and while every religion contributes to the greater whole, only the soul can determine what it needs to do in order to reach the higher power in this life, or lives if you believe in reincarnation, which I do. And as a spiritual counselor or as spiritual counselors, I believe it is our duty to recognize spirituality as a path rather than a destination. We are here to help and guide those that need to find this path. Now, I wrote a book on life and death to enlighten people on life and death as a process and a perspective of both Eastern and Western religious beliefs. The book is called The Chronicles of the Omniton, The Journey Through Consciousness, because that is exactly what it is that we are doing as conscious beings. We are moving through one conscious state to another. And all religions agree in life after death. The spirit does not die. And as spiritual counselors, I would say that we are the best proof of life after death, given our abilities to see beyond and the ability for the spirit to connect to a higher power and deliver these messages should be proof enough that we are living spiritual beings.
Yes, I love the way you said that. We are living proof of life after death. That's fantastic.
Yes. And I believe you have some... go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I believe you had some questions specifically about what the afterlife is like, or just in that realm, that sense in general.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to have a conversation about it. I don't really have any specific questions, but I'm always fascinated with the afterlife. I know I was reading one book where this woman she did a lot of regression work, so past life regressions, and she was actually the hypnotist, and and she would record all of these different sessions that people were having, traveling to different realms, going into what they considered to be the afterlife, and just kind of, exploring it. And she would be there with the recorder, jotting it all down. Now, sometimes when these people came back from from being hypnotized. They didn't quite remember it, the way that she had recorded it.
Sure.
And so I'm just always fascinated. But one of the things that sticks out, and I was mentioning this before you called in, it's just that there were so many different ways that the afterlife was described, and even that in itself, I mean, it says so much, right? Because I feel like as a Christian, when I was a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
it was explained to me in a very, just one way.
Right.
Golden, these golden gates, this light, these wings, those kinds of associations. But
Sure.
everyone else cannot be wrong. You know what I mean? And
No,
so
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's just always amazing to me, especially how this one of the people that she wrote about or that recorded the session for was saying, well, it's anything that you want it to be. So if you believe, there is this hell with fire and brimstone and all of that, that's going to be what you get. If you
Sure.
believe, yeah, that you're going to see wings and whatever it is, God is a person. That's what you're going to see. And so it's just amazing how much control really we have, not even over just the realities that we have here, in this plane, in this like 3D existence, but even beyond, that we carry with us.
Yes. Yes, and I describe the same things in my book because I had to do a lot of research over the years. It took me 7 years to write. A lot of research on the supernatural and life after death and religion and how it all kind of tied into the bigger picture. And what I found is astounding. There's so many avenues. There's so many ways that, we can find proof of life after death. That all religions have some piece to the puzzle. We can't disregard any one.
Right.
And that's my personal experience on it. There's definitely, like you said, therapies, that people use, past life regression, near-death experiences, plenty of things like that where people have been able to come back and say, this is what I've seen. But, and definitely another point that you made, that heaven and hell, I mean, if you want to call it that, exists
Right.
in the soul. It exists in the
Right.
soul. And
Mm-hmm.
for people to, see, the darkness, I mean, it's a place that they put themselves. I believe that we are the ultimate judgment of ourselves in the end times, the end of our lives. That there's no higher power saying, you've done this or you've done that. It's the judgment at the end because you cannot hide what you've done. I mean,
Right.
know what you've done in your life. There's, you're the only one. I mean, sure, there's a higher power that, can see, but we're all connected to it. So
Yeah.
with that being said, we are the ultimate judges, and we will put ourselves in a place of good or bad, depending on how we feel and what we need to learn from our life,
Yeah.
so that we can
Yeah.
move on to a higher place. And if we haven't
Right.
learned it, then maybe, that's where reincarnation comes in, we have to come back, or maybe we don't, but it just depends on your own personal belief and your own path. And I agree with you on that too. I think that it is your own path you have to find.
Yeah.
And I don't, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Amazing. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I very much believe that. And that's kind of why I migrated towards Eastern religions. I mean, I was baptized Lutheran, but I have a lot of Asian cousins, so I was kind of exposed to Buddhism a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Already, and then my marriages led me to that as well, to Eastern religions, and I just found them to be more freeing. But again, it's a personal preference. It's however you connect to the divine, and wherever
Right.
you find peace and harmony in your life. Exactly.
Yeah. And that is one of the really beautiful things I think about religion. It's really it helps us better understand what what it feels like to be aligned, right? Because you can, if you look at it as a tool, you know, it is used in many ways to help, like I said, people better understand what it feels like to be aligned, although it's not spoken about that way. And I'm saying that because I remember as being a Christian in the church, and when we would begin to sing, because I was also in the choir, when we would begin to sing songs, and how good it felt, right? Just that release, I guess, that was happening through song. And I can now look back at it, and it was like, wow, that was a moment of true alignment for me, But I wonder because like I said, there's just that disconnect, right? It's not talked about in church that way. And it's always, I feel like we don't get that sort of, I don't want to call it an objective stance, but we don't get that sort of higher way of looking at religion, that I feel like people really need. Do you understand what I mean when yeah. So is there anything that you want to...
There's a disconnect.
What'd you say?
There's a disconnect there.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wonder why, like why? So we all have free will, and just as anyone goes to church, we can choose to wholeheartedly believe what the pastor is saying in front of us and only take his word for it, or we can choose to do the work for ourselves,
Right, which we should
but
be doing.
Right. And I feel, though, like even doing the work for ourselves, like that's not necessarily encouraged. It's not something that's, saying, hey, or even suggested, really. And so oftentimes people sit in the pulpit, and I say people because as a younger person, I used to be this person, and you take what the preacher says, as, oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about. This man is good, and you almost begin to see him as someone who is higher than you, which is just not helpful in terms of our own development and growth. So
exactly. But I feel like we are moving towards a more spiritually aware time. And that is what I hope for the future. And I always, encourage people to be more open-minded, just not only to religions, but just to other cultures and other ways of being. And ask the questions, dive into things, the topics, the discussions, and really try to find your own spiritual path, because it is part of us as a species. The human race, we are spiritual beings. It is necessary for our lives. I mean, some people can go through life without being spiritual, but I believe that almost every person eventually does find it in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like there's only so long before that we can just push it away without, without something really like just slapping us in the face. Slapping us in the face like, hey, it's now time to pay attention. And you're right. People who choose not to really have a sort of investment, I guess, in their spiritual evolution, they do find it, though, in moments.
In moments,
because we are all spiritual beings, and so how can we not, So,
right, and the people that do come to me and you, with the questions about counseling and seeking help and guidance, and a lot of times I feel like, maybe they are lost. Maybe they do, feel like they need something. That's why they're reaching out, but they don't know what it is that's missing from their lives. And in a way, I try to present that as well. Be more open-minded. Don't be closed-minded to the possibilities of the world, the things unseen.
And a lot of times it's just about unlearning things, you know. So we've got this natural tendency to sort of, like I was saying at the beginning, like harp on the problem, look at the difference, you know, that kind of thing. And it's just a learned behavior, and it almost feels counter. I won't even say almost. It does at times, or at least for me in the past, felt very counterintuitive to not dwell upon, you know, whatever problem it was that I was facing. You know, it's like, oh, look away. How can I do that? You know, and so I feel with the people that I give readings to, you know, who come to me for some sort of insight or advice. It's really sometimes comes down to that, you know, like, okay, so it's time to exercise that when this happens, you know, and it's just really this, it's really just a muscle, you know, like unlearning and now building up the muscle to get the momentum moving in the direction that you actually want it, you know. Yeah.
Right. And can we move back to the topic about the afterlife again?
Oh, yeah,
because I
absolutely.
Really to give a little bit more information about that and about what I know about it. Being an intuitive, it kind of gives you information into, you know, I guess you would call it, the afterlife, and what it's like. Every religion has its interpretation, right? You know, of what heaven and hell is, you know, what happens when we die, so on and so forth. And like I said before, I believe in reincarnation, just because I don't think anything is really final. I mean, to me, it just seems too easy for it to be final. But then again, you know, that's just my own opinion on it. But the way that I've seen the afterlife and in my research and listening to stories of people who have had near-death experience and what different religions portray as an afterlife, it's basically a place, you know, we go when we die, but it's a place that we create. We can create our own version of heaven, whatever we want it to be. It can be something beautiful. It can be, you know, filled with all the things that we love, all the things that we associate with, you know, happiness or paradise, and also a place of continual learning, from what I gather. We never stop growing. We never stop learning. We never stop adding to the bank of experience, of human experience. There's always more to give. There's always more suffering to learn from. It doesn't end. And then that suffering coming from a place, you know, that we put ourselves, you know, only we can see the way out of it to the light, you know. Nobody can help us do that. We have to find a way out. So in a sense, you know, I do in a way believe there is a dark place, but maybe not in the way that Western culture dictates. It's more of a place to grow, to learn from mistakes, and to move on from that.
And that is how it was described in that one book. And gosh, I wish I had the title of it. No, I have it behind me somewhere. But that's exactly, you know, how it was described in that book, as being a place of just learning, you know, the afterlife, of readying yourself. To go ahead, to go forward again and like learn that larger lesson, you know, whatever it is that you needed to learn. But it was also a choice. So some people, as she recorded, she was saying, this author was saying that they chose not to go forward, you know, right away. They wanted to stay in lower frequencies. There was things for them to figure out, you know, or they were really connected to their 3D experience, and so they were not ready, you know, not even for the next step yet. So they ended up in a place that seemed just like the place that they had here on Earth, you know.
Sure.
And so it's quite fascinating. Now, what do you think about the idea that you can choose to not return? if you so desire. You say, nope, I've had enough of the human experience. I do not want to reincarnate again.
I believe that is a choice as well. And we get to that point when we are ready. And we know in ourselves, that comes back to the whole judgment thing. When we know in ourselves that we are ready, that we are done, having these experiences, giving back to the universe through these experiences, then we are ready to join that higher light, that higher self that exists out there. And in my book, I call it the Omniton, just because if you look at it literally, it means all thunder in Latin, which is essentially what the universe is made of, right?
Nice.
Om, it is exactly. It is the sound of the universe. That is where we originate. That is my belief. But yes, we do determine that, and our heaven can be a paradise, anything that we can possibly imagine, and our hell can be as scary and as violent as we feel we need it to be, or it can just simply be a room where we lock ourselves in and we write page after page after page until and a candle that never dries out because or burns out, I should say, because that is where we feel we need to be. That is our own personal hell. And that's what I've described in my book for people who don't know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. But that's my vision of it, and I would agree with you on that. But we do move on when we feel we are ready.
Yeah. All right. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a real pleasure. I appreciate all of your insights, and wow. We just met recently, and so it's great to have you here and to learn so much about you and what you're doing. So I'll definitely have to check out your books. But thank you again, hon. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Good night.
Talk to you later. Okay, talk to you later. Bye. All right, you guys. So we've got just a few minutes here, and I wanted to get in the information. I hope you enjoyed that. That was really some powerful stuff, and I am excited and ready to read her book for sure. So I will make sure to list that in the comments, whatever way I can here to give you guys that title to make sure that you have it. But just wanted to talk to you really quickly about a tool you can use to just zen out really quick. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. So I think I mentioned the title before Natalie came on, but it's, or mentioned what they were called. So mandalas and zentangles, right? So a mandala is just a Sanskrit word that means circle, and it's representative of the universe in Buddhism. And so we've got these great patterns that hold all the symmetry, right? So these concentric patterns that's mostly comprised of squares and triangles. And so lots of people, now create these mandala coloring books, which help us, like I said, to just zen out, to clear our thinking minds and relax as we color these patterns, and to connect back in and to ground and center ourselves. And that's the same idea behind the Zentangle. The Zentangle, excuse me, it's used for the same reason. So lots of psychologists use them, and so when patients come in, they'll give them a sheet of paper because you don't need printed pages for Zentangles. You just need a sheet of paper, and you section off the page with squares or triangles or whatever you want, and you fill them in with different patterns. So whatever patterns flow through your pen. But whenever I talk about mandalas or Zentangles now, I think of this woman who I met when I was in grad school. She came to one of our parties and she did these fantastic henna designs on everyone. But she wasn't just a henna artist. She was also a Reiki practitioner, so everyone's design was very unique to their own energy. And it was really just a great thing to do. So again, whenever you need a quick dose of zen out, whip out a mandala coloring book, which you can find right there on Amazon, or grab a sheet of paper and a pen and create a Zentangle. So all right, everyone, that is all for today's Magic Monday. And if you have a show topic you'd like me to discuss, feel free to leave it in the comments section. And I also want to quickly mention that every third Monday of the month, starting in February, I'm opening the lines up to those who'd like a totally free live mini psychic reading on the air, right? So it'll be kind of like, first call, first serve, which I'm extremely excited. Thank you so much for being here, and be sure to tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. on Station 2 to learn more about my upcoming events and classes, and to experience a reading for yourself. Visit my website at readings.missjdo.ca, and I'll talk with you soon.